Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Immortal Gaming. This is me and Marvin, and we're now here for another video for Ragnarok Origin. And this time, we're going to be talking about all of the jobs that are going to be released this coming OBT this April. First of all, thank you to all of the respective owners of the characters that I have featured in this video. And also, please take note that all of the things that are here in this video are based on my experience, based on other people or other friends' experience on their own jobs, and are purely my opinions. If you have additional inputs or opinions, kindly comment it down below, but please be respectful. Alright, so before we start the video, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do subscribe. If you happen to like this video, please do leave a like, share this to your friends, and click that bell notification button so you get notified every time I upload a new video, start a new stream, or a new content. Let's get on with the first job, the Wizard. Alright, the first class would be a Mage. It becomes a Wizard, and it becomes a High Wizard. The Wizard is a long-range magic caster. So it's very good in crowd control. It does massive AoE damage, and it can also do concentrated single target hits. It's very versatile in element types because it has all of the types that you could possibly think of. It has ghost types, it has wind, fire, water, or even earth type attacks. So it would be very nice if you can use this to your advantage, increasing the damage that you deal on the monsters that you are attacking. Some of the weaknesses, though, it's not that tanky. It's easy to die. Although it has a safety wall, it's still easy to die versus ranged and fellow magic attackers. Also, in grinding, it is HP and SP potion reliant. Next, the DPS of this class highly depends on the amount of reduced cast time. In terms of grinding, I'm gonna rate it 10 because of the AoE damage that it does. It can actually accumulate a lot of kills in a short amount of time, because the more monsters that are hit on a certain single casted spell, then the more experience that you get. Next, for MVPs, the job is also okay for MVPs. That's why I rated it 8. Because of the mob control, because the MVPs usually summon a set of mobs from time to time. It would be very good for you to have a very big AoE caster in your party, such as a High Wizard. For War of Imperium, I'm gonna rate it high because of the AoE effect that it does both in offensive and defensive method of War of Imperium. So I'm gonna rate it 9. For the dungeons, I'm gonna rate it 8 because you don't need that much AoE in dungeons. Only sometimes wherein there's a set of mobs, but there are lots of job classes out there that also does AoE that can also do the same thing that you're doing in dungeons. So I'm only gonna rate it 8. Okay, so let's now go to the Thieves, the Assassins, and the Assassin Cross. Alright, so let's talk about the strengths. This is the Poison Master of the game. The job class utilizes poison in order for him to deal more damage, more percent final damage to the enemy, thus making it fatal and very deadly. Now, it's very strong in PvP because of the high damage output, also because of the hide and for the backslide and for all of the mobilities that the skill set gives. It can also wield 2 weapons in dual dagger build. So that means 2 weapons, 2 sets of enchants, 2 sets of gear modifications, 2 sets of everything, 2 sets of dual cards. All of the possibilities are endless, and the damage can be pumped up a lot. So it's very strong also in single target damage, and it is, I think, the best job to roam castles in War of Imperium because of the hide skill. In terms of weaknesses, I think, and we really deem that this job needs a lot of focus or dollars to increase its damage. Other than that, then it would still take time for you to pump up its damage. It always also needs a blacksmith in the party because of the weapon perfection, because when you are using a dagger, you would most likely be doing only 100% damage to the small monsters, 75% damage to the medium monsters, and only half of the damage to the large monsters. And technically, most of the MVPs out there, MVP bosses out there, are large sized, then you would be having a trouble without a blacksmith in the party. Okay, next, it's not that good in PvE grind in early game because of the slow in kills, and it's going to be costly since you need to consistently build 2 weapons from time to time whenever you're increasing the level of your weapons. So, in grinding, I would still be rating it 6 because in the late games, when you already build a Grim Tooth build, then the grind would be easier for you. In MVP, I would rate it 7 because of the difference in the damage of your weapon or your dagger to the large monsters. But if you still can, recruit a blacksmith in the party, then everything will be okay. In arena, I would rate it very high, 9, because of aside from the mobility, aside from the sudden attack, the surprise attacks, the usual kills will be given to the assassin because of its huge DPS spike when it attacks. So on War of Imperium, it's not good on group clashes, but in late game, it would be very much useful, and also in roaming, it's also good. So I would rate it 8 in War of Imperium. In dungeons, it's also, can be replaced, but you would most likely need it in Geffen Dungeons or in Geffen Helheim because of the skip part, because the assassin can also skip the mobs part of that dungeon. Alright? So next, let's go to the archers that become hunters and snipers in the late game. Okay, so the strength of this usually, of course, can be far from harm. Very good early game build, which is the Trapper. The Trapper deals a lot of damage because the early game monsters don't have that much high magic defense. That's why the Trappers are really going to be dealing a lot of damage. It's a great DPS for mid to late game in MVP hunts, and even in early game, but you have to transfer the build from being a Trapper to an ADL. And it's easy and fun to use, in my opinion. The fast attack speed, the automatic blitz beat, everything is really fun to see and fun to watch whenever you're using a hunter or a sniper. So, some of the weaknesses though, once someone or a monster gets closer to it, it can be in danger, aside from the fact that it can trap that someone, but it gets mobbed, it's going to be in danger, needs a lot of focus or a little bit of dollars to increase the damage in the late game for the ADL build. Not that much significant in War of Imperium, but for the traps. The traps are the only thing that it can contribute. In my opinion, traps are really good and really substantial in defending a castle. I'm gonna rate the hunter or the sniper 10 on grind because of the high damage that the traps deal on early game, and also when you have already invested a lot of efforts in building the ADL, the grinds will be so much faster too. Next, for the MVP, I would rate it 8 because it's a great DPS on MVP, but as I've said before, you have to change build by the time that you get to level 80s or even 70s. In War of Imperium, I'm still gonna rate it 6, even though it's only needed, in my opinion, for the traps. And for the dungeons, I'm gonna rate it 8 because it's still a good DPS for dungeons. Alright? So, next, we have the swordsman, or the knight, or the lord knight is the sole tanker in this version of the game, in the early versions of the game. So it's going to be needed in most of the parties. It's a must in MVP hunts and HHH dungeons. It's really good for MVP hunts because if you have a tank in your party, you can receive a lot of damage because of the provoke skill of the knight, and that adds up to the points that you garner in hunting the MVP. So the more points that you garner in hunting the MVP, the more chances for you to get that MVP loot. Okay, so he's very mobile too because of the charge skill and also because of the Peko mount. Even though you are already attacking the enemy, you don't need to dismount. You already use your Peko every now and then, and it's a staple already on you. Okay, and it can solo grind without the need of much potions because of the natural recovery that it gets. Alright? In terms of weaknesses, the role of a tank of the knight, it goes away. It gets replaced when the paladin comes out. So, they now resort to dealing more damage or becoming a DPS, which is already taken by a lot of other jobs out there. You need also to build 2 sets of weapon because as a tank, you can only use a one-handed weapon so that you can still equip a shield. And when you're grinding, you need a spear in order for you to get that spear build working. Next is, it's not that good in early PvE grinding, alright? I'm gonna rate it 7 in grinding. I'm gonna rate it 9 in MVPs because you need it on early MVPs because the paladin is nowhere to be found. In arena, it's also going to be 9 because you really need a tank in arena, particularly if you have on your party members glass cannons. In War of Imperium, it's still good for offense because of the tank capabilities, the stuns, the crowd control that it can give the party. For the dungeons, it's also needed because you would most likely be battling bosses in dungeons, so you need a tank there. Okay, so I would be rating 9 on dungeons. Let's now go to the merchants. So the merchants become a blacksmith and then becomes a whitesmith. The strength of this character is it's a very good farmer of Eden coins. In my opinion, the Eden coins is so much neglected in the early game, but then again, you would most likely need a lot of it in the mid games. The blacksmith can craft a converter, which is needed by a lot of people. Okay, this job is always wanted in a party full of assassins, hunters, and knights. The buffs that it gives increases the party's DPS in MVP hunts by a lot. And it's a powerful job at late game because of its range attack or the axe termination that I remember in our Korea server. Now, in terms of weaknesses, it's kind of in early game easy to die in MVPs and in dungeons if you don't build it tanky. And it's also kind of hard to farm in early game since the only, increase in damage that you would be relying on in your skill that you use for grinding is going to be the weight of your cart, and that has a limitation. So in my opinion, that's the reason why it's kind of hard to farm in early games. So with regards to that, I'm gonna rate it 8. Still rate it 8 on grind because of the still AoE damage, and at the same time, it can be very fast in grinding in the late games. In MVP, it's also good for you to have a whitesmith or a blacksmith in the party. But in a party full of magic casters, I think the blacksmith doesn't contribute that much. So I'm still gonna rate it 8. In arena, it's still very good. 8 still in arena. In War of Imperium, also very good buff for the party. So I'm still gonna rate it 8. And on dungeons, you can have it, you can not have it, depending on the party members. I'm still gonna rate it 8. Okay? Last but not the least, the acolyte that becomes a priest and a high priest on the next jobs. So the strength of this character, it's just the developers have made it all around in the previous server that we have played in Korea server. Ever since they have put a buff on the Magnus Exorcismus. So it's very flexible. You can do everything that a high priest can do. You can do DPS, you can do AoE, you can do support, you can also solo with the battle priest, and that's it. It's wanted in every single team. Right now, you cannot do any dungeon or anything without a priest, or you would most likely it would be most likely hard for your party to do a single task without a priest, except for the dailies, I think. So for the weaknesses, it's kind of costly to be a priest because of the blue gems, the amount of blue gems that you would be using in terms of resurrection, both for resurrection and Magnus. So since those two are the most prevalent builds that you're going to be using or building because of full support and because of Magnus build, then you would most likely be, you know, spending a lot of blue gems. And it's also not good in early PvE grinds, because in the early PvE grinds, you still have a ton of cast time on Magnus and it's still pretty costly for you. So you would most likely go for a battle priest or a bonk priest. So that's why it's not that good for early game. And since you are flexible, you have to make 2 sets of weapons, 2 sets of shields for each of the things that you would want to do. And for both of those weapons, you need a high refine. So it's going to be costly for you. Alright, so with regards to this, in terms of grinding, I'm still gonna rate it 8 because on the mid-game to late-game parts wherein it's going to be easier for you to grind because of the AoE of Magnus. And for MVP, I'm gonna rate it 9 because the High Priest or the Priest is a staple in every party. Same goes with Arena, still 9. Same goes with War of Imperium, and same goes with Dungeons. All 9. Alright, so that's it. I do hope that this guide has helped you a lot in, you know, making you decide which job to use or which job to pick on the OBT release this coming April. And that's it. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do subscribe. If you happen to like this video, please do leave a like, share this to your friends, and click that bell notification button so you get notified every time I upload a new video, start a new stream, or a new content. That's it. See you again on the next video. Bye-bye!